What's up, New York? Welcome back to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you today, episode 65 on this Monday before Thanksgiving, and the Giants making a quarterback change. It is Tommy DeVito, not Drew Lock, getting the start this Sunday against the Bucs after the Giants have their bye week. What does it mean? What's the reflection of the Daniel Jones era, and why is it Drew Lock starting? The Giants actually gave guaranteed money to over the spring. The Jets lose another heartbreaker to the Colts. They can't defend. Sauce Gardner might be overrated. And Aaron Rodgers wants to come back if two things are with the Jets. But can those two things actually happen? We'll talk about it. Knicks sweep the Nets. A couple of very entertaining games and some good signs for both teams. Hockey locals, those Rangers and Islanders are out west. Devils had a good weekend down in Florida. We will talk college football. Army Notre Dame this weekend at Yankee Stadium. Big Mike from Indy Sports Nation will join me to talk about it from the Notre Dame side. Army knows with a win could be on track for a shot at the playoff berth. We'll dive into that. We'll talk Rick Pitino winning the battle against his son yesterday at the Garden. We'll talk UFC. We'll talk college football, college basketball, and of course the big NYCFC Red Bulls soccer matchup this weekend. Coming up, we'll preview that, and a tough weekend for Gotham FC down in DC. It's all coming up next here on New York State of Sports. We will see you in just a minute. And of course, welcome back, New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio. Ricky K back with you again on this awesome Monday here in the tri-state area. Of course, I want to remind you, as you can see on the screen, you can follow us on X, IG, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Just search IE Sports Radio. All of our stuff's on YouTube, which is awesome. We have shows going on live pretty much almost every hour of every day. Want to check that out. If you're looking for anything related to this show, each show has a page on IE Sports Radio. So go to iesportsradio.com/New York State of Sports. If you feel free, if you missed part of the episode or you just want to hear me talk about stuff again, you can download the podcast. It's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, all that fun stuff. It is on there at your leisure. Be sure to check that out. You can follow the show on X at NY State Sports IE. Or you can follow me on X at Rickinator555. Always happy to hear from you. Feel free to show some tweets throughout the next hour plus. Send some comments throughout the next hour plus here on the YouTube channel. We definitely appreciate all of those. So we'll take a quick break here from our sponsors at Planet Jerky, Seal the Deal Wax Seals, and Larry B has a message about what's to come here at IE Sports Radio. And then we will talk Giants making a move at quarterback, and we will also talk the Jets losing it yet again to the Indianapolis Colts as they head into their bye at 3-8. And both these teams might be looking for a quarterback, and both might be on the wrong side of things. We'll talk about a lot of that coming up next here on New York State of Sports. We will see you in just a minute.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
IE Sports Radio fans, be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And a special thanks to all of our sponsors here at IE Sports Radio, Planet Jerky. Make sure you get those awesome Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky flavors. Especially a great gift for the holidays, as well as Seal the Deal Wax Seals. Maybe get some awesome seals for your invitations, your Christmas, your holiday cards, all that fun stuff. And, of course, IE Sports Radio. Check out the shop. Get some cool merch and all the cool things going on with all of our shows. We've got some new shows coming up that we're very excited about here on the network. So be sure to check that out as 2024 comes to a close over the next 6 weeks or so. Well, Daniel Jones's run as Giants quarterback has come to an end. It was reported by Adam Schefter this morning that the Giants are making a quarterback change, and it is going to go back to Tommy Cutlets, a.k.a. Tommy DeVito. The run of Daniel Jones is over. And I think you look at the Giants, this is a move by the organization that was predicted. They weren't going to stick with Daniel Jones that much longer. Of course, there's the injury guarantees that if Daniel Jones were to get hurt, the Giants would be on the hook for a lot of that money that they were trying to avoid. But it's not just a financial decision, it's a football decision. Look, it's not been a pretty tenure for Daniel Jones in New York. It has not been a great season for Daniel Jones in New York. 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 63% completion rate, 2-8 as the starter. In his career, 70 games with the Giants, 24, 44, and 1. It's not all his fault. And I've said that a lot here on the shows over the last weeks and months, and we can go through it ad nauseum. The fact of the matter is it was time to make a change weeks ago, and now the Giants have put themselves in this place where I ask myself, is Tommy DeVito's play going to cost them a chance at a quarterback in the draft? The Giants have to find the next guy. Joe Schoen, if he wants to stick around, has to find his next guy. Because we talked about, and Joe Schoen was mentioning, well, we're 2-18, but it sounded like when Joe Schoen was giving his press conferences last week, he was giving a lot of excuses as to why his team wasn't any good and basically hoping he sticks around. because if the Giants continue to be this bad, I don't think Brian Daboll's sticking around. We talked about that. He was supposed to be the offensive play caller that was going to fix things. And when they made the playoffs in 21, it looked like they were starting to fix things. But this organization made the move to go invest money in Daniel Jones instead of investing money in Saquon Barkley. And in hindsight, it works. But when you watch Barkley on Thursday night against the Commanders, basically lift the Eagles to a victory. And the Giants never put everything around Saquon they needed to, particularly the offensive line, something that Philly has excelled well with. But that was the wrong move to make. They should have seen through it. Daniel Jones was okay, but he's not a franchise quarterback. And whether the neck injuries or the ACL injuries had to do with some of that, it's probably the case. But you look at DeVito's play, and you go back to last season. He had 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He did not throw an interception in his last 6 games. Now, that's kind of skewed because, again, he got benched on Christmas Day against the Eagles. He only threw 2 passes against the Eagles on January 7th. Remember, Tyrod Taylor played in those games. But DeVito had the comeback win against the Packers. He had the win against the Commanders where he threw for 3 touchdowns. But he also was sacked 37 times in 8 games. Well, 9 games. 37 times in 9 games. So my question is DeVito's play going to cost them? Last year they won a couple of games, but it cost them a shot at Drake May. It cost them a shot at Jayden Daniels. It cost them a shot at Caleb Williams. And we know how badly this front office wanted to get a quarterback, and they couldn't get it. So they were stuck. You look at the top of this draft. Tennessee needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. Vegas needs a quarterback. Right now, the Giants would be around 5th in the draft. The Jets are 7th. Jets need a quarterback. And if you're the Giants, you're basically watching these Jacksonville, Tennessee games. They play each other twice in the last 7 weeks, hoping you get things right in your favor. But DeVito plays well, and the Giants win a couple of games. And you look at this Giants schedule the rest of the way, and yes, I know they lost to Carolina. There's not really a game that's a gimme game on for the Giants on the schedule, but we'll go through what their last few games are. They've got Tampa this week. That's a 1:00 game. I think Tiki Barber is actually in the booth for this game, which will be interesting. Dallas on Thanksgiving, which is now Cooper Rush versus Tommy DeVito. Oh, my gosh. Saints at home, winnable game, even though the Saints are 2-0 since they fired their coach. Ravens lost at Atlanta, probably lost. Indy at home. We'll get to Indy in a minute. And then at Philly to end the year. Who knows what the Eagles need? So let's say the Giants win 2 of those games, right? We said maybe they actually beat Dallas now that's Cooper Rush playing quarterback and not Dak. Maybe they actually beat New Orleans. Maybe they steal a game against the Colts. I mean, that's 4 wins. 4 or 5 wins might not be good enough to get the guy you want. Then you have to start trading assets and things like that to get the quarterback. So this isn't play Daniel Jones because you need a tank, but I don't see the need to bring in Tommy DeVito here. Tommy DeVito, to me, I know the Giants want to see if he could be a backup next year, but did you kind of see that last year? Do I need 7 more games with Tommy DeVito to see what he actually is? He's okay. He's not great. And the question's going to be, well, what happened to Drew Lock? The Giants paid him $5 million in guaranteed money to play and be the insurance for Daniel Jones. And now he's $5 million sitting on a bench. Now, I know Lock didn't look great in preseason, but why are you burning $5 million that you could have used on another position? Why didn't you just bring back Tyrod Taylor? There's a lot of questions here, and I didn't see yet. I know Daboll spoke about a half hour ago with nothing involving Drew Lock, essentially. But to me, I don't see why he's not the move. And then maybe you go to DeVito later in the year. But why couldn't Lock, let's say, play this week against Tampa, play the Thanksgiving game against Dallas, and then when you have that extended break, maybe then go to DeVito? I don't know what they're doing. But again, I'm not the Giants. I can't tell you what they're doing. It's an absolute mess. And look, they need a quarterback badly. This regime needs a quarterback badly because they're hoping that they stick around long enough to take a quarterback. And that's not necessarily a guarantee that they will, but time will tell. Taryn, good to hear from you, man. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what happened to Drew Lock. And remember, he chose to go to the Giants because there was an opportunity to maybe get some starting reps. When he could have went back to Seattle and backed up Geno Smith. Like, there were opportunities for Drew Lock out there, and he made that decision. And I think that's really the big issue here with the Giants is they have not really made the right moves from a signing standpoint to make things happen. They've tried to invest in the offensive line. At times it's worked, but they've never really fixed the problem. And they have a lot of internal issues they have to fix. It's not all the quarterback. And I think that's why people tend to pin everything on Daniel Jones. All right, you fix the quarterback. There's still issues, and you're seeing the roster is very flawed when Joe Schoen started compared to where Joe Schoen is right now. And I think that's where the coach is on the hot seat. And I still think the GM is. I haven't seen anything from Joe Schoen that I think he should be picking the next quarterback. But let's talk Jets, who were, again, had the lead late in a weird game against the Colts and allowed Anthony Richardson, who got the start on Wednesday. And I'm going to shout out Angela from the Tornado Takeover show. We had a big meeting yesterday, and I was calling what looked to be the Joe Flacco Aaron Rodgers Bowl as the AARP Bowl. Instead, it was Anthony Richardson versus Aaron Rodgers, which she brought up. It was kind of like Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, where Richardson's the young player and Rodgers is basically the washed up quarterback. And it looked that way for a half. Aaron Rodgers at one point had 16 yards passing with about 3 minutes to go in the first half. He was 5 of 8. Devontae Adams had 2 catches for no yards. And you're looking at this offense that just has never figured it out. Has never found a way to make things work with Rodgers and Hall and Wilson and Adams. And the offensive side, we'll get to that. They still had the lead, 5-point lead with about 3 minutes to go. They elect to kick the field goal when even Rodgers said afterwards maybe they should go for it. But he's not. Is he the one saying to go for it to Todd Downing, or is Todd Downing making that call? Plausible deniability looms large. But you had Richardson hit Alec Pierce for a 39-yard pass where Sauce Gardner gives up the coverage, thinks that Jalen Mills has it, doesn't work. Richardson then hits Josh Downs for 17, hits Pittman for 4. And then on 3rd and goal, Richardson basically trucks a defender into the end zone for a touchdown. Jets get the ball back, 46 seconds left. They're thinking they've got a shot. Rodgers gets sacked. The ball goes backwards 7 yards. Then you get a 5-yard pass. Colts get a delay a game, and then Rodgers gets sacked to end it. And you haven't seen Aaron Rodgers have that signature Jet comeback moment. But the defense is really, I think, what looms large in this game, because in between all that, they couldn't get a stop. Colts were 6 for 15 on 3rd down. They did a much better job containing Jonathan Taylor, but Anthony Richardson, who never really completes passes, was 20 for 30 in this game. He had his best game as a pro. And you can't allow that to happen. It was all downfield passes, and you know that's Richardson's MO, is he wants to get the ball down the field. He averaged 9 yards per attempt. You have to make everything in front of him, get him frustrated that he can't throw the deep ball, and make him make mistakes. And they were able to do that. They got a fumble in the 3rd quarter. The Jets were starting to spark some things, and the game plan just went stagnant. And it leads you to the question defensively, is Sauce Gardner overrated? And I think that's the case. Sauce Gardner to me is overrated because you look at this Jet defense, he's supposed to be a shutdown corner, and he's not doing that. And you ask yourself now, and you look at this Jet defense, I know they have injuries, but who's your foundational player? Quentin Williams? I would say so, but after that, you haven't seen anything like Sauce Gardner that says, is this a guy I want to build around for the next 5 years? We've seen the Jets have issues, i.e. Jamal Adams, thinking he was the guy, and that backfired. And I think the issues you have with this squad is what's your foundational pieces. Now, they've had injuries on defense with McDonald, Jermaine Johnson. Like, there have been issues. McDonald's playing, but you haven't seen him be that impact guy that we saw earlier in the year. So they have a lot of questions, and they look better with Saleh than Jeff Ulbrich. But Ulbrich, to me, you're trying to give him 5,000 hats, and you can't expect that guy to do stuff. But the offense, to me, is a problem. And the fact that this offense, again, did nothing in the first half. They didn't have a penalty until the 4th quarter. I'll give them that much yesterday. But the stat line for Aaron Rodgers is skewed. He was 22 of 29 for 184, but he averaged only 6 yards an attempt. They can't get any consistency going. You're not seeing Garrett Wilson have the same impact. He had 8 targets yesterday, 4 catches per 18 yards. Not a good number. This is an offense that was 4 for 13 on third down. Not very good. And they just, again, could not get those big plays in those big moments that they needed. And you saw this from Aaron Rodgers during the week that I think it was Connor Rogers from SNY had something that Rodgers is looking for consistency and stability when deciding where he wants next year. He's not getting that with the Jets. And some of that's his fault. Because you brought in Devontae Adams, you brought in all these guys, and nothing's working. Nothing. And this is an abject failure for him because you look at all the quarterbacks in the past, the legendary quarterbacks that changed places. Montana had success with Kansas City. Peyton Manning had success with Denver. Tom Brady had success with Tampa. I'll even throw Russell Wilson in there. Look what Russell Wilson's doing in Pittsburgh. When he looked like a shell of himself in Denver, and Pittsburgh's 8-2. And what's Aaron Rodgers do? Brett Favre, even when he was with the Jets, before his injury, was 8-3. Brett Favre had the Jets in a position to win the division and go on a run in the AFC before he got hurt. What's Aaron Rodgers done? He's done nothing in this town to merit what he wants. Right now, when the Jets bring in a new head coach, and they probably will bring in a new GM, because I think Joe Douglas is done, they can't worry about what Aaron Rodgers wants anymore. He wants out. Go see if somebody else wants him, because I can't think of a team right now that's going to say, yeah, I want this Aaron Rodgers. They want Aaron Rodgers from 3-4 years ago. Aaron Rodgers, at least yesterday, despite those struggles in the first half, that's a guy at least I say, hey, I need a field goal to win. I start on the 30-yard line. I got to get 35 yards. And he couldn't even do that. So just a miserable performance for the Jets against a Colt team that, okay, is 5-6, but what do they have to show for it? Nothing. They have nothing to show for it. So the Jets will next play on December 1st. They have the bye week. This week, they will play Seattle, who beat San Francisco yesterday. Seattle actually is very good traveling west to East Coast, and we'll preview that game next week. But the season's over. They're 3-8. They're not going anywhere. They're 11th in the AFC. And now they're in a position where they're picking right now 7th. And can they get a quarterback in the mix, or is Rodgers back next year? That's going to be the question everybody asks from now until after the Super Bowl. Is what does Aaron Rodgers want to do? And they won't be on the hook for a lot of money, but they'll be on the hook for a lot of the cap ramifications. And that's what people worry about. But a Jet team that got 10 first downs yesterday, they had 10 first downs. You watch the Lions against Jacksonville, they had 30-plus first downs. And that's where a team that has all these great skill players and we saw Fashanu play left tackle for the first time yesterday and did, from all counts, okay. And that's a guy you want to see build around over the next final 7 games or so. But that's where both these New York franchises are. One's trying to see if they can get a spark from a different quarterback, and another is just playing out the string. Jets are just playing out the string right now. And we'll see how much pride they have over the last 7 games, because they've lost a lot of that. We'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk some basketball. Knicks played the Nets a couple of times this week, and some good things from both teams. We'll talk the Mets getting a meeting with Juan Soto. And, of course, coming up in 20 minutes, we will talk some college football. Big Mike from Indie Sports Nation is going to join me, and we'll preview the big Shamrock Series matchup at Yankee Stadium between Army and Notre Dame. You're listening to New York State Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all those sports. We will be back in just a minute.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph DeLeese, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports, and I will update you on all that's black and gold. Have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh Sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Galise, the Yinzer Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Locke.
And we're the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
And welcome back to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, a direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you as we get set to talk some basketball. The Knicks took on the Brooklyn Nets for a pair of games this week at Madison Square Garden, one of those being part of the NBA Cup, in which the Knicks actually have won the first two games of their NBA Cup play. Now, you could argue that the NBA Cup is a waste of time. I think it's actually pretty cool because, let's face it, it's one of the few reasons we would watch games in November outside of those weird courts that they have. But it was a fun atmosphere on Friday. The Knicks were able to get a sweep. Now, it wasn't pretty, and you give Brooklyn a lot of credit. I mean, this is a Nets team that is 5-9, but they're fighting with the best of these teams in the league. When you look at fighting with Boston, fighting with Cleveland, who's 15-0 and competing their butts off, they're trying to do the best they can with what they have. The Knicks just have too much firepower. And you look at a Knicks team that had a 21-point lead on Friday, ended up blowing that lead. Cam Thomas had a game for the ages, 16 for 22 shooting. He made 7 threes, 43 points. He had 14, I think, in like the first 8 minutes of the game. Like, he was absolutely clicking on all cylinders. And then Jalen Brunson hits a three-pointer with 6 seconds left to save the game a few days after the Knicks came back in Chicago, only for Josh Hart to foul a three-point shooter. Then the shot goes in and out. Knicks end up losing that game. You can argue the Knicks really should be disappointed by that, but a win's a win, especially in the regular season. You take it. And then yesterday, Knicks get a 114-104 win. They get Karl Anthony Towns back in the lineup. He did not play on Friday. Deuce McBride did not play on Friday. So you saw a lot more Jericho Sims in the mix. You saw a little bit more in the rotation, which I think was a good sign. McBride didn't play yesterday either. He had a knee issues. We'll see when he gets back into the lineup. But one of the things you're seeing is Mikal Bridges start to find his form. He's got 20-plus points each of the last 3 games. And look, he was going to go in with a little bit of motivation on his shoulders because of the fact that he's playing his former team, wants to kind of make a statement. He was 9 of 18 last night, 21 points. I love what OG Anunoby has been doing from an offensive standpoint. He had 24 on yesterday, 25 on Friday. He had 8 boards in both games. He's got 8+ rebounds in 3 straight. Had a little bit of an off night against the Bulls, just 14 points, but he has scored 24 or more in 4 of the last 5. You're starting to see the player that the Knicks kind of had early in his tenure when he was playing with Randall and they went on that run over the winter. Look, they've got a good starting lineup that can space the floor, make different shots. We've talked about Karl-Anthony Towns a bunch on this show, that he has been a different player offensively. Now, he's not a rim protector defensively, and they need Mitchell Robinson for that. But you kind of saw Jericho Sims do that to an extent. 4 rebounds in 18 minutes last night. He's a guy that can, with extended minutes, get more impact. He'll get Precious Achiuwa back. So they'll fix things defensively. What's important to me is you're getting the spacing right now on offense. And last night, 4 out of the 5 starters had 20-plus points. They're able to constantly get the ball moving back and forth, side to side, making those impact moves. Brunson had 10 assists last night. Towns have been absolute money on the boards, averaging 12 boards. Knicks are, I think, as a team, averaging about 115 points per game. So all in all, I think you like those things from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, they'll figure things out, but they had a good fourth quarter in Philly on Tuesday, had a chance to win a back-to-back in Chicago. Against the Bulls at home, they could not. But sweeping the Nets, look, they're 7-6. And I think that's where you need to be, because look at the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference right now has only 4 teams with a winning record. Cleveland, it's 15-0. Boston, it's 11-3. Orlando, it's 8-6. And the Knicks. Detroit's the 5 seed in the East right now. And again, 15 games to an 82-game schedule, but they're 7-8. As opposed to the West, that has 9 teams with a winning record and 11 teams at least 500. So the East is down, at least right now. Where Brooklyn, if the season ended today, would be in the play-in at 5-9. I mean, that's where the East is right now. You have your haves and your have-nots. So remember last week we were asked, are the Knicks a good team or a bad team? I mean, I think they're a good team. I don't panic to the results. And they have a good stretch coming up. They get Washington at home tonight, who's terrible. They're 2-10. Knicks are favored by, I think, 14 points. They're at Phoenix on Wednesday. That's going to be a test for this team. And they're at Utah over the weekend. Utah is 3-10, worst team in the West. So Knicks an opportunity to get some wins on the schedule this week. As for Brooklyn, I liked what I saw from Jalen Wilson last night. He had 15 points. Remember, no Nick Claxton in either of these games. And that's going to play a factor because Claxton's that rim protector for the Nets that you expect. I mean, they gave up 139 to Boston on Wednesday, so the defense just has not been there, at least from that game. They had the good comeback against the Pelicans on Monday where they won by 2 points. So they're showing some good things. Nets are home on Tuesday against Charlotte. That's more group, the NBA Cup play. That's the Nets' second game. They will also have an NBA Cup game on Friday at Philly, which is a winnable game for them. And then they go out west for 3 games. They'll play Sacramento, Golden State, and Phoenix before Thanksgiving. So some good things there. And I think for Brooklyn, the schedule gets a little bit lighter these next couple games. Winnable game against Charlotte, winnable game against Philly, the way Philly's been playing. And we'll see if this team continues to develop, continues to progress, at least at the meeting they have. Meanwhile, on the NBA side, on that NBA side, the MLB side, the Mets had a meeting with Juan Soto, according to John Heyman of the New York Post. And all things considering, very good meeting on the Mets' part. And again, you're not going to hear about it if it was a bad meeting. And we're still, I think, a couple weeks away from Juan Soto making a decision. The Yankees are going to meet with him today. And what's really the Yankees' pitch to Juan Soto is I don't think they could sell him on the, okay, you loved playing here, sure. But this is a guy that wasn't really a lifelong Yankee. Like, it was easy to sell Aaron Judge that. It's not easy to sell Juan Soto that. You could sell him that, hey, you can make the playoffs for the next 10-plus years and have a shot at a title. But Steve Cohen can sell him the cash. I mean, the Mets have so much dead money coming off the books that they can make that sales pitch. And they can make that pitch that, hey, you could be a star in Queens. Lindor will still be the guy, but Soto would be on another level and bring eyeballs to Flushing that, okay, the Yankees bring him back, but the Yankees so many holes. I don't know if Hal Steinbrenner is going to compete with the checkbook. And again, if he were to lose out to the Mets, it would be a PR nightmare. But the Yankees, to me, I think have more holes, and we talked about this. that I just think the Mets have more to offer at this point in time. Doesn't mean the Yankees are in a bad spot. I mean, it's a team that made the World Series last year. They can make moves and get back there. To me, the Mets are the more desperate team to get the superstar, and I think they will find a way to get it. But it's going to take some time. So he'll meet today. I don't think that you'll see something happen. I know reports where it's probably like the first, second week of December. Because think about it. Soto meets, say, with the Yankees. I think he takes a week to decide. You're at the point of Thanksgiving. I don't think Soto wants to make a decision on Thanksgiving. You're looking at probably the first week of December. Winter meetings is like the second week of December. So we still have a little bit ways to go. That's why the market, I think, is going to slow down to some extent. Ralph is here. Says, man, I miss baseball. I do too. But remember, regular opening day is like March 27th this year. So really, we're only a few months away from it. And he asked, do you know if the Mets use Lindor as a push? I think he helps. If they used him in the pitch, there were reports that he was out in California, and then there were reports he was out in California for something else. Again, who knows in hot stove season? I don't pretend to know those things. I think they would have been smart to. But is Lindor going to be that big of a factor? Like, let's say Boston. Like, if Boston used David Ortiz, is that a big deal? Like, I think Soto is between the two New York teams. I don't think Soto is going to sign a 12-year deal with Toronto. Sadly, for the Blue Jays, everyone's using them in negotiations because, again, who wants to go to the Blue Jays? And on the Red Sox, I'll believe when they spend the money when I see it. They haven't acted like a big market team in a long time. I know Soto's a different player, and it'd be really cool from a baseball standpoint, not a New York standpoint, to see him with Devers. But I don't really know what the situation is going to be with that. So, again, I think Lindor is in the mix, and he can help. I just don't know if he's necessarily the answer or going to be the reason Soto picks New York. The reason Soto would pick the Mets is the money. And that's okay to say that. Like, I think people think, oh, it's bad to say it's because of the money. That's what he wants. He wants to win, sure, but he wants the cash. But we'll see how it goes over the next couple of weeks. Really quickly, before we take another break and go into college football, Rangers got a nice win last night against the Kraken, 2-0 in Seattle. Jonathan Quick, his second straight shutout, 24 saves. Remember, he had the shutout in Detroit. You got a goal from Zach Jones in the third period, which was huge for this team. Lafreniere had a big goal in the second to get the Rangers on the board. And Rangers, of course, are dealing with the injury to Philip Hedl, an upper body injury that he suffered against the Sharks on Thursday. You hope he's okay, but you know his injury history. The Rangers are going to be as cautious as they possibly can. And that's going to play a factor, of course, and when he comes back. You have Hedl on that third line, which is, well, not Hedl, but Cully on that third line. They'll need to step up a little bit. They'll try to find that third line center in some way, shape, or form. But a strong defensive play in net. The Rangers are 11-4-1 in a crowded Metropolitan. Carolina's been good. New Jersey's been good. Washington's getting a good performances from Ovechkin. But we'll see what the Rangers do. But it's good to have Quick in net because Igor has had his struggles, and Jonathan Quick has been playing extremely well. Rangers have Vancouver tomorrow. That's a 10 o'clock game. They have at Calgary on Thursday, and then at the Oilers on Saturday on this West Coast trip. See, they get a few points. I mean, the goal is to get points when you go out west. I'm not expecting them to go 4-0, but try to get some of these key results and play a factor. The team that was in Seattle was the Islanders, and they took a tough loss in that one. They had a 2-1 lead in the third period. Brock Nelson had a shorthanded goal, and then goals from McCann and Alexiak gave Seattle the lead. And there was a controversial call in that game. It was Ralph says, weird thing for the Islanders. They had a better record at this point than last, and major players are hurt. And they're kind of fading in a tough division. But Patrick Waugh commented on a controversial non-goalie interference call and said, I guess that I haven't played enough games, and this is a Hall of Fame goaltender. But look what the Islanders have done. They've actually they've been able to get points a lot of these games. They stole a point in Edmonton last week when they were down 2 goals, rallied to tie, and lose in overtime. Beat a good Vancouver team. Well, not a good one, but won 5-2. And then should have had a point against Seattle, they couldn't do that. They'll be at Calgary on Tuesday, at Detroit on Thursday, and then home to the Blues on Saturday. So the Islanders have that coming up. Devils, I love what I saw from them against some of these Florida teams. They swept the Florida Panthers, the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and really did well offensively in those games. They scored 10 goals, outscored Florida 10-3 in those two contests. One wasn't against Bobrovsky, but still a really strong effort when Bobrovsky played. They won 6-2 and got 3 power play goals, a hat trick from Jesper Bratt. Saturday night, not a good performance. They lost to Tampa Bay 4-0, 29 saves from Vasilevsky. And Markstrom in net, 23 saves on 26 shots. You look at Markstrom this year, and again, we looked at this with Sab with Igor. Markstrom plays. In wins, he has a 1.75 goals against. In losses, it's a 3.71. And I think Jake Allen has actually looked better at times than Markstrom. This is a Devils team that, again, the standings are kind of skewed. They played 4 more games than everybody else, but they're tied with Carolina. Washington's a point back in the Metro. Rangers are 3 points back. Devils have a couple of big games in the division this week. They will play Carolina on Thursday, and they will play the Capitals on Saturday. And I'm not sleeping on those Devils, Ralph. This is a team that I think what's weird about them is they'll score 4 goals or they'll score none. There's no middle ground. You look at their last couple of losses. They've been shut out in their last 4 losses. So when they score, they win. But that's kind of the boom or bust that this young Devils team is. So we'll take another break. We'll come back. We'll do some college sports, talk some college football. We'll have a special guest on to talk about the big matchup at Yankee Stadium this week and so much more in our special grab bag segment here on New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Of course, welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K back with you. Talking some college football real quick before we get to our special guest. I want to shout out SUNY Cortland, who's number 2 in the country in their division. They beat Ithaca in the battle for the Cortica Jug on Saturday, 28-17. They're 10-0 on the year. This is a really good football team. They'll wait for their NCAA selection show, Division 3 champions, Sunday at 5 p.m. will be the selection show, but they got a really good performance from Zach Boyes. He had a touchdown. CJ Messina did a good job for this Cortland team. It was 9-14 on third down, winning their rivalry game. So I want to give a shout out to them. But we have a big game coming up this week at Yankee Stadium in the Shamrock Series, and I think nobody would have thought that it's the second biggest game of the week in college football. If you told anybody that in September that Army Notre Dame would be this big game, I think nobody would have thought that. But to join me now to talk about it, we're going to have a special guest. He is the host on Indie Sports Nation. You catch him every Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Big Mike is here. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I am good, Ricky. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. I don't think you even thought back in September that this weekend would be late November. Indiana would be the central point of college football. So I'm sure this is a surprise to you.
This we barely know what to do with ourselves here, man.
So let's get into this game. And before we dive into the X's and O's on it, I want to talk a little bit of Notre Dame. And I think it's weird to say Marcus Freeman's club has been under the radar in extent because they lost Northern Illinois early. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, they haven't played as strong of a schedule, and everybody's focused on the SEC and the Big Ten.
Right.
But what have you seen from this team in these wins? Because when they're beating teams, they're not just beating teams like close; they're blowing them out.
Yeah, they're putting beat down on teams, and that's it's kind of what they're supposed to be doing, right? Especially when you've got a strength of schedule that's not, at the top, upper echelon. What I've really been impressed with in the past several weeks is just the improvement of the offense, how efficient they become, how Riley Leonard has improved greatly. That was my critique beginning of the season, besides that Northern Illinois just awful loss. It was just wasn't really sharp. I mean, he's good running the ball, obviously. We've seen that. But over the past several weeks, he's becoming a much more efficient and a much more accurate thrower, which obviously opens up that offense quite a bit.
Yeah, we know about Riley Leonard, the running back, which is kind of weird. You saw early in the season when they were playing Texas A&M, I saw more Riley Leonard running the football than I actually saw him throwing the football.
Correct.
And I think people wondering, can this guy win games throwing it, which is going to be weird this weekend because it's really going to be about both these quarterbacks between Riley Leonard and Bryson Daly. They don't really want to throw. They want to run, which is going to be, I think, the weird aspect of, is Leonard going to be patient enough to make those plays against an Army defense that has played well, albeit against limited competition?
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because, quite frankly, I think he has to. I haven't been able to watch a ton of Army games, but I've watched enough to see that run defense there is pretty stout. So I think really, in order for Notre Dame to really, to win this game, I think they're going to really need to diversify it up a little bit, and he's got to be comfortable throwing the ball.
So Notre Dame is favorite in this game by 14 as of right now. I think total is 44.5. But I think from a Notre Dame perspective, I was curious on this. When they played Navy, everyone looked at this big game, that big test, and Notre Dame absolutely crushed Navy. Does that result maybe look at Army less than, or how do you think that plays a factor? Because I'm sure people on the outside are like, oh, this is Army, they're going to blow them out. Does the Navy game kind of make people think that'll happen again, or do they expect a closer fight?
Closer fight, no doubt about it. There was a lot of people here locally that thought Navy was going to pull off the upset. I was not one of them. However, I did not anticipate that beatdown that took place. However, those Navy had 6 turnovers that game, which was more than they had like the entire season at that point. And they were all unforced. I mean, they were muffin punts, and they couldn't even do a pitch to the running back without fumbling the ball. Do not see Army doing that at all. I think Army's a better squad this year than Navy. I mean, so I expect this to be a much tougher fight.
Yeah, I would think so. It's an Army team that doesn't really turn the football over. I mean, Daly had an interception 2 weeks ago against North Texas, but like you said, their defense, I think, is good enough to keep them in these games, and they just run the ball on everybody. I think what helps Army as well is having 2 weeks to prep for this game.
Absolutely.
Where Notre Dame is coming off, yes, they beat the living stuffing out of Virginia, but to only have a week to prepare for this type of unique offense. I know Jeff Monken it's kind of evolved from the past days of playing the service academies where there at least is some threat of throwing the ball. But I think Army having time to prep, and I think this is a team that, like Notre Dame, I think kind of feels disrespected. I mean, you look at the college football rankings, they're 18th in the AP, but they're 24th in the college football ranking, and Tulane is catching up to them. Tulane has 2 losses.
Yeah.
So it's like, what more does Army have to do? I get Boise State's the better group of 5, and they'll probably get in anyway in the playoff, but even if Army wins this game. But this is like basically Army's national championship in a sense.
Absolutely right. And I think Army's going to probably play their best game all season. Now, granted, I thought that with Navy too. We saw what happened, but as I mentioned, I think Army's a little bit better squad this year. And I fully expect Army to come out, and I'm really looking forward to that matchup in the line of scrimmage, especially with Army's run game and Notre Dame's defense, because Notre Dame's defense has been the narrative all season. And what Notre Dame has done a really good job with, whether it's the pass defense or the run defense, is that initial point of contact. You're not getting it, yards after contact when you're playing Notre Dame. That's been their MO this whole season. We've seen it in defenses, whether it's college or the pro level, where if a running back's coming in and you're getting a tackle, but that running back will fall forward and get that extra 2 to 3 yards type of thing. Notre Dame is really good at not allowing that to happen. So I'm really intrigued to see that matchup on Saturday night, see how Army can, how their run game does and how Notre Dame's defense stacks up to it.
So one more on Notre Dame, because I know we have to talk about your Colts yesterday for a little bit. What is this team's ceiling? Is it a national championship team? Is it a team that can get to a semifinal, being that if the highest they can get is the 5 seed, which would be a bye, not a bye, but a home game in the first round of the playoff? What do you think this team's ceiling is?
I think that's probably right about there. Get in the playoff, host a game, and maybe win that first game. Now, game, if that's the case, game 2, I think would depend all on the matchup, and we'll see how that shakes out at the end. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm playoff team win a game, and I think that's probably about where they're at.
And I think I agree with that partially because it's tough to trust until it's like we were talking about before, like with the baseball, with the Red Sox, I have to see it to believe it that they're going to spend. I kind of have to see it to believe it, sadly, with Notre Dame, that they will win a big game after that first home game to believe they can make that run. Because I would want them to play, let's say, I think if you did the conference champions, it would be like Colorado as the 4, and you're playing Shedeur and Travis Hunter. I don't really know if Notre Dame's defense can keep Shedeur down for that long. Or like you said with the matchup, if it's Cam Ward in Miami, I don't really know what they could do in that kind of game against that high-octane offense because they haven't played it.
Correct. And I think in a game like that too, I mean, Notre Dame's had a couple, big injuries this year. It hasn't helped, although Xavier Watts has been playing out of his mind. So I think he'd be a type of defender that could keep him around in a game like that. But with a high level offense, like you just mentioned, that would be a challenge for them, no doubt about it.
So our old buddy Ralph asked, and he asked you specifically, your thoughts on Anthony Richardson comeback yesterday to beat the Jets. It looked like it was Flacco, then it was Richardson, and I don't think anybody knew what really to expect, but I don't think anybody expected Richardson to have what I said earlier in the show, his best game as a pro. So what did you take away from yesterday?
It was absolutely his best game as a pro. And I'm loving the fact he's back. I didn't love how they handled his benching initially. I just thought they went about it a very sloppy way. I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, when I was watching the game and, seeing what Anthony's done this year when he was in the game and the inconsistencies, to say the least. So when the Jets took the lead, I'm sitting there going, well, probably just lost it. And then the poise he had coming back, I was really impressed with that. So I'm glad to see him back. We knew when we drafted him that this kid he's a project. He's going to take him some time. And, he got back out there and he looked really good yesterday. I thought I was really glad to see it, even though it was at the expense of one of your teams there. But I'm looking forward to him finishing up the season and just really seeing what we have with him.
Yeah, that was a weird part yesterday. If you told me the Jets are going to hold Jonathan Taylor to 57 yards and they really worked on their tackling, which was something that was a big problem in Arizona, that I would have thought the Jets would have won pretty easily. But the fact that, and what bothered me about the Jets yesterday was, Anthony Richardson is going to throw the ball downfield. Like, your game plan should just be to play zone.
Correct.
Make him take stuff in front and frustrate him to all hell. And the fact that he's still able to throw those downfield passes, especially where Sauce decides to let his old Cincy teammate just run right by him. I don't know where that was.
Yeah.
It's really mind-boggling to see it. But, you look at this Indy team, for all the bad headlines they took over the week, they're only a game out of the playoffs, which maybe speaks to how bad the AFC is outside of the top 3 or 4. But, they're right there. And honestly, outside of the Detroit game, a very winnable schedule down the stretch.
Very winnable schedule. And I've been saying this on my show. They've been going through this 5-game stretch here. And I thought initially they needed to win 2 of them. And it looks as though, barring a borderline miracle on Sunday, it's probably going to be 1 win and the 5. But to your point, the rest of the AFC kind of being what they are, the Colts are hanging around. And, even if they lose to Detroit, they have to go to New England and play New England, which is a winnable game, and then a bye week, and then Denver, which could be essentially for a playoff spot at that point.
You would have thought Indy, Denver, December 15th, maybe flexing to a Sunday night game. That would be – I would have never thought it'd be Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix with Jim Nantz maybe on a call in Denver. And that's the NFL this year.
Exactly
all signs are good outside of New York, essentially, in football. Yeah. But let the listeners know out there before I let you go where they can check your show, what's coming up on Friday. Of course, you got that big game at the Shoe, Indiana and Ohio State. Let the listeners know where they can check that out.
Yeah, so obviously right here on IE Sports Radio, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Indy Sports Nation. You can follow me a couple pages there at the at Indy Sports _IESR. And then also at the Chill Mike. That's my personal account. Both of those are on X, Twitter, and what have you. So on Friday, we'll obviously talk about the Colts game a little bit, preview the Lions game, talk about the week that is the Pacers. And then I will be having a special guest from Ohio to break down the IU Ohio State matchup.
Yeah, I was talking about the East in the NBA earlier. The fact that the people were talking about the Knicks as like a mediocre team at 7-6. I don't know if you saw this. There's only 4 teams in the East with a winning record. So it's like I don't really know what to make of the East outside of an undefeated Cleveland and an 11-3 defending champion Celtics. Okay, so if the Knicks are bad, then who's good? And Indiana's 6-8, but I don't look at Indiana as a bad team at 6-8. I don't know.
No, they're I think in years past they've started off strong, then kind of fizzled out a little bit, except for last year. I think they're still a decent team, and I think the Knicks are too. I was at that game last weekend where the Knicks were, or I guess weekend before now, when Knicks came to town to play the Pacers. And that just was 2 teams just battling out. It felt like last year's playoff semifinal. It was just both teams played really, really well, I felt. Pacers are dealing with some injuries. Got 2 starters out, and then 2 of their bench guys were out for the year. So their starters will be back, I believe, in December. It's made Rick Carlisle change up his rotations quite a bit. And I think he's still kind of seeing what he's got, what he doesn't got, and hence, therefore, they've taken a few losses they probably shouldn't have. But, hey, you're going to take him now, not later in the year, if anything else. So I think both teams will still be fine.
Yeah, I do too. Again, the East is just weird when Philadelphia is 2-10 and Milwaukee's 4-9. I mean, you don't know really what the East is at this point. But be sure to check out Mike's show every Friday. Good Indiana stuff this week, particularly this week. And like I said, Indiana is the epicenter of the college football world. So you're going to want to check that out this weekend. Mike, thanks for hopping on. All the best, and hopefully we'll talk again down the road.
Absolutely, Ricky. Have a great show, brother. Be good.
Thank you. So, again, I think this is a really big game for Army this week. As I talked about it, really feeling disrespected, really feeling – and Bryson Daly's been playing out of his mind. He's got 21 rushing touchdowns. Can Army run the ball and control the clock enough to beat Notre Dame? We're going to find out. But I think this will be close. I don't know if Army covers, but I think they hang around and make this one a rock fight at Yankee Stadium. I think that's what's going to be a lot of fun. Going real quick with the rest of college football, Syracuse goes out to Cal, gets a nice win, 33-25. Syracuse was dominating that game late, so the score kind of misleads what was going on. Kyle McCord had a strong game. LaQuint Allen ran the ball extremely well. He had 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. McCord 323 in the score. Syracuse is 7-3. They're 4th in the ACC. They will take on Connecticut this week. Both teams are 7-3. So UConn's had a good year for Jim Moore Jr. Of course, Syracuse doesn't want to be looking ahead. They have a big one in 2 weeks at home against Miami. Miami will need that to go to the ACC championship. So Cuse with a chance to play spoiler. And it was cool they gave Fran Brown, the coach, a thing of Old Spice deodorant because he said that he only showers after wins, which was really an interesting thing to hear from him. But again, Syracuse, for all the bad losses they've took, has a chance at a 9-win year. So good win for them out west to take care of business. Meanwhile, in the Big Ten, Rutgers is bowl eligible. So congrats to Greg Schiano, bowl eligible in back-to-back years. So it's been an interesting year for Rutgers, but they've found a way to get to a bowl game. Kamenon guy had a 97 yards, 2 touchdowns in front of Ray Rice. So that was a fun moment for him for sure. Cal McManus played well on the road. They will take on Illinois this week. That game is noon Eastern on Saturday on Peacock. Illinois is 7-3. Rutgers is favored in that game. The Illini have actually lost 2 of their last 3 games. They lost to Oregon on October 26th, lost to Minnesota, but they beat Michigan State last week out of the bye. Really good big game in the Big Ten in terms of bowl positioning and things like that. But Rutgers, at least, even if they lose the last 2, they are going to a bowl game. So congrats to Greg Schiano. Real quick on the soccer side, before we dive into college basketball, tough weekend for Gotham FC. They were out at D.C. taking on the Washington Spirit, a team that had their number this year. They took the lead in the 59th minute. Esther Gonzalez, she scored. But then the Spirit scored in stoppage time, went to PKs, and the Spirit won 3-0 in penalties. So a tough run for Gotham FC. They will not repeat as NWSL champions. So all focus shifts from the NWSL to MLS this weekend. NYCFC against the Red Bulls, Saturday, 5:30 Eastern at Citi Field on Apple TV. Winner goes to the Eastern Conference Final. It is a 1-game knockout, so if it gets tied, it goes to PKs. And what's interesting to me is the battle in net, Matt Freese against Carlos Coronel. Coronel had a good series against Columbus, but Freese, I think, is the better goaltender. I think, and Red Bulls have more firepower, especially with Forsberg and Lewis Morgan. But can Nick Cushing's defense do enough? And do they get that timely goal from Santi Rodriguez or Maxi Morales? Both these teams have a golden opportunity in front of them. Keep in mind, the top 3 seeds in the East are out. The 4 seed Orlando advanced in PKs in their quarterfinal matchup. So this is a wide open Eastern Conference to get to the MLS Cup. And I don't think you're going to see both these teams get a better opportunity. In NYCFC's case, to get back to a final. And for the Red Bulls case, who've been in the playoffs 15 straight years, a chance to win an MLS Cup. So both these teams know what's in front of them. And I think it's going to be a really entertaining game. Outside of the blowout early this year, most of these matchups are a 1-2 goal, just decided by a goal, if not 2. So the Hudson River Derby will provide some entertainment this week. Real quick, college basketball, St. John's gets the win yesterday with New Mexico. It was the battle between Rick Pitino and his son, Richard Pitino. course, Richard Pitino doesn't think that they'll return the favor and play the matchup in Albuquerque next year. But that was a big win for St. John's. And a game they had the lead. New Mexico battled back to cut it to 4 midway through the second half. And then Devion Smith came up big. Kadari Richmond, a strong all-around game. But St. John's was dominant on the boards. And you were hearing Richard Pitino, one of the mic'd up things of the first half, calling his team soft. They're getting out-rebounded 17-6 at one point. St. John's was getting a lot of second-chance opportunities. And even when they were struggling, they found a way to withstand that adversity. And that was a really good opening tactic against a team in New Mexico. It's probably a tournament team. They beat UCLA early in the year. They now head out to the Bahamas for the Baja Mar Challenge. They play a ranked Baylor team on Thursday. They'll play either a ranked Tennessee or a Virginia team that beat Villanova as well. They'll play Georgia out in Atlantis. So a really good chance over the next week or so to see what this St. John's team actually is. I don't think that if they come away 0-2, we're going to come away like they're not a tournament team. This team's good. The team's got a lot of depth. But if they can come out and get a win or two in that tournament, they could be great. I mean, Pitino says they're not great yet. They're a good, solid team, which I think is what they are. They have a ways to go to be great, but this is definitely a really good start for this team that has had some struggles in the past couple games. Wagner gave them more they could handle in the first 30 minutes, but then they rallied to make that convincing. All in all, good effort from St. John's. Rutgers saw the return for Ace Bailey. He made his collegiate debut last week against Monmouth. Played pretty well in that one. Rutgers got a pretty convincing win. They'll play Merrimack this week. Not exactly a murderer's row for them. Remember, St. John's and Rutgers are both ranked in the top 25. That game is on Peacock on Wednesday. And then they will play Kennesaw State on Sunday. That game actually is at Kennesaw State. So Rutgers will have its first road test before they go out to the Players Era Tournament, which we'll preview next week. Syracuse did not have a fun week. They had to go to double overtime at Youngstown State, but they found a way to win, but they have struggled in their 3 non-conference games, so they're 3-0. They will play Texas this week. I think it's in Brooklyn, that tournament, so good test for Syracuse. Seton Hall beat Wagner in a game. I think that Seton Hall is going to play good defense, but they're going to have trouble scoring. With 54-28 was the final. They are out in the Charleston Classic this week. That starts Thursday against VCU. That game is at 5 on ESPN2. St. John's, if you want to catch it against number 12 Baylor, that's at 7 o'clock Thursday on CBS Sports Network. Syracuse, I'll get you that time as well since we talked about it. Syracuse will play Texas. That game is Thursday, 7 o'clock ESPN2. And again, that game is in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. So you're going to want to check that game out as the Thanksgiving tournament start to take center stage. Lastly, UFC 309 was at MSG this week. John Bones Jones got the win over Stipe Miocic. So really good card there for Dana White and company. Obviously, John Bones Jones stole the show. So you get everything going on in Gandalf here on YouTube. Seton Hall badly needs to find ways to score. And we talked about it kind of a couple of weeks ago. Seton Hall doesn't have a lot of the depth that they had a year ago. I mean, obviously, you lose Kadari Richmond. You really don't have that big of a score. Like, we can look at the Chauncey Jenkins is a guy that has 15 points per game. They had 16 yesterday in that Wagner game. And really, outside of Jenkins, they got no production from an offensive standpoint. It's really just Coleman had 7, Adewusu had 5. They got 12 off the bench from Tomey, but they were 20 for 44. I mean, they're lucky Wagner only made 11 shots. And you look at a team in Seton Hall that played Hofstra, lost to Hofstra, and that's no thing about it. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's a bad loss necessarily. I think it's a better win for Hofstra. Like, we don't get to talk about them a lot here on the show, but Speedy Claxton has turned Hofstra into a pretty good mid-major team. They haven't made the tournament yet because of that one bid in CAA where if you lose the conference tournament, you don't get in. But Hofstra's been one of those emerging mid-majors here locally along with Iona in recent years. So not a bad loss, but you're clearly seeing Shaheen Holloway doesn't have much to work with. And I think that's going to doom him in the long term in terms of you want to get him to stay, and Seton Hall doesn't have the resources to keep bringing in these top classes. So Holloway's going to have to do a lot of development. So it's going to be a struggle in a Big East that, quite frankly, hasn't had a lot of signature wins. I mean, you look at UConn, they played well. Marquette will get an opportunity. They beat Maryland this week. They get Purdue coming up. That'll be a test for them. But really, the Big East has underperformed in a lot of these non-conference games. Look at Georgetown getting blown out by Notre Dame over the weekend. The Big East needs a big week. I think that's where St. John's they could get some wins, or like that's why the Big East missed last year. They didn't have those marquee wins out of the league. So in terms of the whole St. John, Seton Hall kind of thing, you want Seton Hall to win these games because you want the conference on a better standing. If these teams don't win, then really what's your opportunities in the league to get those quality wins to get to an NCAA tournament? That's going to be interesting. So we had a lot on the show this week. It's been so much fun. But heading into next week, what does Tommy DeVito look like against Tampa Bay? I'm sure the Bucs are well excited. I'm sure you want to go out and pick up the Bucs defense in your fantasy league, because that's going to be something that I don't know what we'll see. Brian Dable, I think, is answering questions as if like, oh, he understands the question. Doesn't want to say why, but the Daniel Jones era is over. He's going to be the quarterback, third quarterback, the emergency one. Drew Lock will be the backup, playing out the strings for the Giants, trying to get them back in. Yeah, Tommy Cutler back in action. The Jets, they're going to the bye. I think the bye might be favored next week, but this is a really rough one for the Jets. Football is kind of taking a back burner here in New York with both teams looking at top 10 draft picks over the spring. And that kind of disappointing time. Basketball-wise, the Knicks have a couple of big games this week. They head out west. A lot of the New York teams out west because of all the Thanksgiving basketball tournaments. So you have the Knicks doing Phoenix, the big test on Wednesday. Rangers are out west for a couple of tough teams in Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. We'll see what they do out there. Big game in the Yankee Stadium this week. Army, can they put up a fight against Notre Dame? If Army wins this, I don't think they don't get to the playoffs, which is weird, but Army at least is confirmed in the American Championship in December against Tulane. Tulane played very well. The only two losses are Kansas State and Oklahoma. They get 4 points. So Army's got a couple of tough games to try to win the American for the first time. The Notre Dame game will reflect the conference play, of course, but chance to make a national statement. You have Rutgers in the bowl game. Syracuse is playing well. And of course, college basketball. Big stuff going on over there. Thanks to all those who tuned in this week. We had a lot of fun. As we head closer to Thanksgiving, I'm thankful for all of you guys for tuning in, spending time on your Monday afternoon to check out the show. From all of us here at New York State Sports and Friday Sports Radio, I'm Ricky K saying enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.